Hacks likes this very much.
Welcome to
Coffee with Hoppies.
Coffee sounds like he's in a wind tunnel.
Good evening and welcome back. Does it still sound like that? I don't think it does. Welcome back to Coffee with Toffees, guys. This is a episode that we put together because of some news that just dropped. We're going to give you a short weekend review, and I feel a little bit bad for my writing team because they're going to get snipped early because we want to talk about some major announcements that just came out. The announcements of 4 majors that will definitely be defining the face of Dota 2 in competitive nature going forward. So I'm joined by 2 guests who you're probably used to seeing on the show. The first here with me is Alan Bester. You know him as Nahaz, the face of the MLG Columbus panel, who did a wonderful job there. Glad to have him here rocking his MLG swag. How are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing great. I am actually doing quite wonderfully.
I literally got a message from Nahaz about 2 minutes after this announcement came out. They said, when are we talking about the good news? I thought he was having a baby. I thought I was having a baby. I don't know what was going on. And then I saw the announcement and went, oh, that makes sense. I also, Nahaz, thought you had some insight onto a job I was offered that I'm not allowed to talk about yet. And I was like, whoa. How are you so smart? But we'll talk about that later this week. Second, I'm joined by a man who is in a room of many people. You will hear the voices in the background. Just pretend they're the voice of God, though it may be the voice of Mod.
Hey.
It is Greg, What is
yelling.
Hip Laird, the face behind Dota Pit, the man who started High Ground TV. How are you doing this evening, sir?
I'm doing pretty good, man. I'm just hanging out.
Nice. Rocking your Twitch swag. So literally everybody has sold out on the show tonight, and I appreciate that. It really takes us.
Dude, I'm wearing my Twitch sweater with my Sennheiser headset and my Alienware laptop.
There you go. That was as hard as it could be sold. But I've got advertisements on the top of the show, so I can't say anything. You got to make ends meet, right? That said, let's get right into the meat and potatoes of things. We're going to talk about a couple of the tournaments that are going on that are relevant to you knowing right now, and then we'll actually talk about. I'll just mention the other tournaments so that you can check them out on your own. And again, I'm going to apologize to my writers at the end of that block because, really, Nahaz, you got to outclass us that hard? No, it's fine. I just got like a pizza.
I'm celebrating, dude.
I got a pizza cup with some Coke, and
I don't know about you guys.
Greg is here in a hoodie, and you're like sipping wine holding the stem. It was classic.
Drinking.
Oh, that will be the only classy thing I'll do tonight. So there you go.
All right, so let's talk about the tournament going on right now that everybody is watching. That is the Star Ladder LAN Finals. We know, if you don't know and you're in some alternate universe, the teams playing in this are Tinker, Malaysia, VG, Invictus, Team Secret, Alliance Cloud9, and London Conspiracy, who is already out of the running. Double elimination, best of 3 bracket, best of 5 for the final. Basically, to give you the breakdown, it's the first and only LAN with the rosters, the first online LAN, or offline LAN, I should say, for the new rosters of Alliance, Tinker, and Malaysia. And I think that's important, right, guys? Because if these rosters do well, that could very well have a big bid on the, probably not direct invites, but the qualifiers for TI.
Yeah, I mean, both of those teams you mentioned.
It's fair.
Have any of those teams stood out to you as you watch this? I mean, there's one obviously, but which one?
I mean, yeah, the obvious one is Team Malaysia not only taking best of 3 against Secret, but the way they did it. They beat Secret in game 1 44-14.
Yeah.
And in 169 Pro Dota 2 games that Secret has played, that is the largest kill differential that's been posted against them. So not only did they beat Secret, but they beat Secret convincingly. In the first and the third games, it just looked for large stretches like Secret couldn't do anything against them. Secret have been a little bit shaky recently in some games, but Team Malaysia looked extremely legit.
Now let me ask you this, Greg. Greg, do you mind if I call you Gerg? Because it's just a habit at this point. But Gerg,
you can do whatever you like.
Do you think the Secret defeat of Team Malaysia is a symptom of them maybe not taking them as seriously because of the lack of seeing them? A lot of us didn't expect them to do, I think, as well as they have been lately. Or do you think it's just a symptom of Malaysia is a lot stronger than a lot of us gave them credit for out of the gate?
I mean, I have to be honest. So I've been traveling all day, so I didn't get to see the actual games. But I'm glancing at the drafts here, and they don't really look too out of the ordinary.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's some stuff that's a little weird. Omni hasn't been seeing that much play. Leshrac, I guess, but looks pretty standard draft. So you can't even really sum it up to like unusual play style, really. But to me, I think it just probably a showing of strength from Malaysia. I heard some excuses from Cyborg Matt last night. They like didn't have food last night. Some of the players were like sleeping in the same bed because there was some issue with the hotel. But I don't think that's like a real issue. I don't know. For me, at least, that's just a cop out.
I mean, let's be honest here. When I used to play in LAN tournaments in college, I slept with my computer in the backseat of a car after I won a case of beer at my buddy's dorm, and I still played well the next day for round 2. So you can get through just about anything.
Times have changed, Toffees.
I know, right?
These games
Times
were
have
not.
changed.
These games were not close. I mean, if it's
No.
That's what it seems like.
if this is an hour, 90-minute crazy
Yeah, I would
game,
agree.
I could see that would make a difference. But Team Malaysia won convincingly, and I don't know. I mean, I think Gods actually pointed it out best on Twitter that, you know what, if anybody at this point is underestimating a roster composed of Mushi, Ohio, and KYXY at a LAN, that's a little bit silly. And I mean, I read that and was like, duh.
That's true. Well, I mean, and Baseket puts it well
Yeah,
in
that's
Twitch
true.
chat. This is pretty much the same roster that surprised everyone at TI3.
Exactly.
Orange
exactly.
was a great team. So it's funny that they're surprising people because, we should have seen this coming. I think the real funny part is that eHome dropped them and has to sort of be kicking themselves potentially on the nature of if that was the way it went. And from what I understand, it was that they dropped the team when they moved. They've got to be kicking themselves a little bit for that one. So next thing you need to know, first LAN since the DAC for both Secret and C9. So this is a pretty big one. Secret, not with the greatest showing. C9, I didn't get a chance to see. Did they play today?
Yes.
And how did that game go? Did you get a chance to watch it?
They beat Team Tinker pretty handily. They had a really long, drawn-out game one, as C9 are what to
96
do.
minutes.
And I mean, it's C9. What do you expect? But then they came back and just rolled over them in game 2. And I mean, C9's probably the third
This is
best
kind of a
team
neat
there.
draft game too.
Yeah, it
They have
was.
Gyrocopter and Spirit Breaker.
Yeah.
I mean, I think in that game it was a little bit of Tinker just kind of being down after that
Yeah.
first game. There's no better way to put it.
Makes sense. Interesting fact.
I mean,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Tinker. You have to imagine that for Tinker, this is like, perceptually for them at least, this is a pretty important tournament.
Right.
Because they're kind
It
of on
is.
this they're on like shaky ground for like new roster.
See, I
new
think
region.
I don't
They've
know
been
about
boot
that.
camping.
I don't think that. I think that given the newness of the roster and the unevenness of some of the results, I don't. Short of winning, I don't think that they were going to play their way into an automatic bid, and I think that they're.
No way.
I think that they're locks for a qualifier bid anyway. So I
that's
actually see
probably
that.
true.
I actually see it being a lot less important for them than the first two teams that Toffee's brought up. I mean, Team Malaysia and Alliance are the two teams to me that are playing for the automatic bids.
Absolutely. Alliance is definitely in competition. I would say probably with NIP directly
Yeah.
for who gets that last spot. But that's a show for today after Star Ladder, by the way. We are going to do a panel show. I'm working on the panel now where we discuss TI invites. If we have time, it sounds
That'd be
like
fun.
with this new announcement, they're going to be out very shortly. That said, interesting fact with Star Ladder before we leave it, this is the first time ever that no CIS team has attended the LAN finals for Star Ladder in 11 previous seasons. Teams in that region have been it's 49.5% of participants. So that's a pretty big shakeup that there's no CIS teams in this thing. That's all. It's just a fact. All right, prize pool was based.
I mean, they've won a lot of them too, right? I mean,
Yeah, they do
that's
well.
like a little
Navi
biased
won.
because Navi won like 5 in a row or whatever.
Well, and
But
that's
then,
it.
but then
Some shit like
Empire
that.
won in January, so
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I mean, but it does show, I think, a little bit of the shift in regional dominance, right? There was sort of this CIS emergence for a while where there was some really great teams. CIS was really putting them out there.
yeah. But
and
this
they've
is
slipped.
this is like the worst. This is the
worst
worst
year.
patch and
Yeah,
the
that's
worst
true.
meta for CIS Dota. Like it really is. You cannot play balls out Dota in this
Right.
patch.
That is true, and CIS loves having their balls out. So prize pool started at 80,000. It has been increased to 128,000. So still a little bit of a smaller prize pool than we're used to seeing. But so far, a really great tournament. And honestly, I'm going to say I've been very impressed with the production of this LAN. The last 2 LANs I've watched, MLG Columbus as well as Starladder, have been well executed, well thought out, and the production values are really high. I want to go out and I'm going to make make a statement on this because I complain constantly, for those of you who are fans of the show, about panels and how badly they're done. This panel desk design is the best one that I've seen so far. They use the right ideas. They have a V shape. They have a camera that has zoom potential. All they need now is a live director to call close-up shots, but one step at a time. So I think we've come a long way. And
is it like so I haven't seen this at all because I was driving all day today. But it's like the Frankfurt one.
It's
No,
smaller.
it's actually it's a little bit smaller, but I think that the angles and the setup of the
Frankfurt
shots
one
are
is
actually
huge,
better.
Yeah, so the key is the Frankfurt.
That was honestly
like this,
my
which
one.
is too much.
Yeah. Oh, I can't see you.
Oh, you can't see me. So Frankfurt.
I was very large though.
It was large. They had a lot of people stuffed into places. The angle was too hard. And we'll take a quick lesson. A wide angle where a camera can sit in the middle and do a swivel and allow the panelists to talk to each other while glancing to the camera when needed is just super important. And Starladder nailed it this time around. So that said, that's great.
I have to say, my only complaint about MLG was I thought the flat panel desk is kind of rough.
I agree.
I mean, we had the same thing at the 2 group stages. Like that shit is awful.
Yeah, really, that was literally the only thing that I would have changed. I mean, other than that, those guys are, those guys are pros. They know their trade. They've obviously done a lot of events before. I mean, I had a great time. I had no idea what I was doing when I showed up for that event, and they just the whole thing was seamless.
Yep.
So, kudos to them.
Absolutely no, and I think MLG Columbus was a great event. I'm not just saying that because they do a lot of U.S. hosted events that I want to end up at eventually. I think it was clean, sans the flat panel, but we'll get into that. That's a different show. I'll talk one day about production stuff.
That's not like a big deal. It's
right.
Just...
No, it's something easily changed.
Right, and that's the thing is, one day I'll put together a show where I'll pull in people from outside of Dota that I know who work in film and TV and just talk about what makes a good panel, and we'll break down some ESPN stuff. Join Dota MLG Pro League Season 2 is up and running. We're not going to go deeply into that, but what you do need to know, as we've talked about this, the LAN finals will have 2 invited teams. They're Empire and EG. Those have been announced, and 6 qualified teams will be at the offline events at the X Games. So that's kind of a big deal that we're going to be at the X Games. CSGO was there. Yes, we got no TV coverage last time, but maybe things will change.
But look, I mean,
I have to be honest. I don't care that it's at the X Games.
Look, it's a lot of people are saying that it's a big deal.
I do too.
The fact that that our players are going to be on a stage getting medals, it's a big deal, man.
Well,
this is ESPN has done a very, very good job putting their brand on a lot of different alternative types of competition and promoting the hell out of it.
Right. So
we are insane if we don't think
my thing is, if it's the same thing as CS:GO, then it might be different this time around. Like, we haven't seen what the event's going to be like. But the CS:GO one, like, it could have been fucking anywhere. The only reason I knew it was at the X Games was because there was X Game logos and they got medals at the end. It wasn't mentioned on the coverage. It was not integrated into the coverage.
But
like, does it really matter that much?
Yes, it does. Because again, this is ESPN we're talking about, and you show up, you do your time, you put together a good event. They look at that footage, and even if you don't get the primetime TV spots and the TV air the first time, you keep doing it, and you have a quality event, and eventually you get that exposure that takes you from, a very small niche to potentially a much wider audience. It's a huge opportunity.
My next thing is I don't think Dota is the right game to be showing on TV in the first place. To be honest.
We'll see. I think I would tend to agree with that. I think CS:GO has a lot more sort of broad potential for appeal.
I think it's way better.
But again, though, don't underestimate the fact that Dota has a $10 million tournament and CS:GO doesn't.
Right.
Like that generates a lot of interest right there. I mean, we got a lot of mainstream media coverage last year, including by ESPN. I mean, this is not something where we're just necessarily. I mean, it might happen the first time, but this is not something where I think Dota is just going to be off in a corner and and nobody's going to care. At
Well-
least not forever.
And I'll leave it at that. Let me comment on this because Greg might not be old enough to remember this. I'm sure you probably are, Alan. But once upon a time, if you wanted anything that wasn't mainstream, the only show you could watch on TV was Wide World of Sports, right? This was this half-an-hour feature on NBC, and it was really cool, and I freaking loved it as a kid, and it was amazing, and they'd showcase things like extreme skiing. Then all of a sudden, X Games came out. The first year it came out, I remember it. It was on ESPN2, and it was nutty. Like, they had downhill biking and just crazy stuff. Nobody watched it except for a bunch of kids. And all of a sudden, after that, we saw 3 or 4 more X Games, and the next thing we know, we hear snowboarding is being entered as an Olympic event. We hear
And look-
about alpine, like downhill skiing for the first time. It was crazy.
And this is it's been part of ESPN's strategy for many years right now. They understand people remember who's first. And they've been willing to take a chance on some of these alternative forms of competition that maybe not many people are interested in, and because they make that a part of their brand.
Yep.
You know, everybody knows ESPN is the one that covers all this shit. And that really does mean something. You know,
So-
especially if like poker, if it gets big.
Right.
Right? People know ESPN for the World Series of Poker.
So, I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's the fact that everything takes us a step closer. You've seen the production value jumps in our lands and our experiences in the last year and a half. Imagine that once we start to get TV coverage, if we get that. But that's neither here nor there. Maybe a talk for
Yeah.
another show as well.
Skim is saying give Mate your debate. Let's get on.
All right. ESL 1 Frankfurt is going full steam. Only one spot left as VP and Alliance have secured the other 2. 3 teams are still fighting for it. It's worth noting that Na'Vi have beaten Team Tinker very easily, and they will face C9 or Empire for the last spot in the LAN finals. SEA, Malaysia takes it. No big surprise there. In China, IG won this China qualifiers, and they will be defending their ESL 1 title in Frankfurt. So congratulations to them as that sort of shapes up. The Summit 3, we talked about that last week, so I'm not going to do it again, but that is coming 2 weeks from this weekend. So that's going to be a damn good tournament. Dota Pit 3, we are now in the playoffs. VP 1 versus HR in the winner's bracket and are now guaranteed a top 3 spot, so a pretty good payout. And by the way, stop for a second and say VP has looked good lately.
Oh my God.
So good. So good.
The irony, by the way, is that people talk about C9 as being the late game team.
Yeah.
VP are 13-1 this patch in games 60 minutes or longer. They have more 60-minute games played than anybody else, and they have more wins.
Not too shit. Yeah, I mean, so they're a great team. I think I've always liked. I've liked since Polar came together. I'm glad to see them doing well and look forward to them getting through qualifiers very, very strongly. Let's see. NIP also eliminated Vega in the lower bracket, so Vega is out, and Ninja Pajamas continues to advance. Because of the way Dota Pit works, I still have no idea when the EG secret game is going to happen. So hopefully we find out about that soon. All right, I
Dude,
imagine
join the club.
yeah. So I imagine the lands.
Join
and
the
everything
club.
is-
I would also like to know. When the EG secret game is going to happen. Okay, so there's a couple issues here. EG can't play for a while for
Right.
reasons. I'm not going to go any further into it. And they also were hoping to play when both teams were in the U.S. So we're hoping to find a time during the Red Bull thing where they can play each other while they're on the same
Oh,
ping.
that's right.
Oh, that's a good idea. Okay, so
Because right now they're in Romania, or they're in whatever Bucharest. They were in
Right.
Turkey.
And they'll be in
that's
LA,
Impossible.
is that
But
basically
then
the
soon they'll
bottleneck in the
both
tournament
anyway,
right now?
So. There's still some games we can play, but I think there's only like 2 more series we can play before we have to wait for that one.
Gotcha. By the way,
So,
the prize pool
rip.
for that tournament started at $80,000. Greg, as you know, it's up to $259.5 thousand now. That's a 224% increase over the initial release. I'm going to chalk part of that up to the fact that the Pudge set looks really, really good, and the rest of it up to the fact
I mean, all
that
the sets are good, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, the
all the sets in the compendium are amazing.
Yeah.
We're gonna
companion
talk
is strong.
about that later. By the way,
the companion is very strong.
Yeah.
And when you compare it to like
There's
MLG
another.
Columbus,
I mean, there's
sales,
still one more
different
set coming. There's one more thing coming out still.
Really?
From the 250K stretch.
game. Nice.
Yeah, it's been submitted, but we're just waiting.
Awesome. So more stuff coming. You got it here from Gerg first. Let's see. D2CL5 is going on right now. I'm not going to talk about that. We'll talk about that later next week. iLeague 3 is up and running. But from what I understand, Black and Mushi will return to China to play in this tournament. So I don't know how that's going to work, per se.
What?
So I guess is Tinker going
Think-
back to play in iLeague? That's got to be what it is. Yeah.
yes.
So Tinker got the invite to iLeague 3, so they will be headed back, as will
I think they
Malaysia.
qualified, right?
They are Tinker beat the American qualifier, and Malaysia got an invite, from what I
Right.
understand. So that's kind of fun. They get to go back to their old stomping grounds and take their new team up against their old teams. So that will at least be fun to watch. Prize pool was 300,000. It has already increased to 405,000. So that's going to be a tournament to watch going forward.
It's up to 405.
It's up to 405, 30% increase already.
Dude,
yeah, fast.
those.
And
That's
the
only
teams,
one
well,
set, right?
Yeah, and the teams aren't even like. And
It's
here's your argument for
Chinese
Chinese.
I swear to God, yeah, the Chinese consumer group spends way more money than anyone else.
Well,
They also
Holy
do. I mean, come on, it's also like limited supply, right? There are many fewer big Chinese lands.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
They control supply. That's
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
so let's see. Keep moving through. Dream League 3, basically Unknown has secured the third open qualifier and will play in the league phase. Worth noting that both Tinker and Four Clovers and Leprechaun played in this qualifier but failed to win it. Only one more open to qualify. So that means that the official standings for Dream League 3 when we get to the LAN are going to be Alliance, Ninjas in Pajamas, Empire, Na'Vi, Aces Polar, Bird United, basically Unknown, and then one more open qualifier to be determined. Prize pool for that is still $100,000. VP Pro League is going on. Dota 2 Canada Cup Season 5 is going on. And then obviously there's the Season 1 of the Face It Pro League, which isn't really a tournament, but it's got a $10,000 prize pool, so that's sort of a big deal.
Face it, that has been so much fun.
I've heard it's been a blast. Odie is killing it over there. This is a kid who has literally exploded onto the scene, and he is. We joked earlier about how you're the Hansel of Dota. What is hit? But I think that Odie Pixel is the Hansel of Dota. If you watch Zoolander, he's this new talent that's coming out of nowhere, and it's just so much fun to watch. So, doing a great job over there. I know he's doing a lot of the casting for that. That said, that's the tournament roundup. That's what's going on in the scene right now as far as tournaments go. And the reason we do that is every Friday we want you to be able to keep up with it. This is as close as you're going to get to Sports Center for Dota 2. That said, it's also a good lead into the fact that that's a lot of tournaments, guys. There's a lot of things going on at the same time. And part of that is the big rush to get your tournament in before TI invites go out and qualifiers, right? Because that sort of changes the face of the game. That said, things are changing next year because I'm going to read the official announcement to you. For those of you who are listening on the podcast, I may not have seen it yet for some reason. I don't know if maybe you were asleep or in a coma or dead. But here's the announcement that just came out. The International is drawing closer, and next week we'll be releasing the International Compendium along with Major Balance Update. Soon after that, we'll be announcing the teams that will be invited to International. So we're going to see that very soon. However, we'd like to talk about our plans for improving the competitive landscape as a whole. As fans of the game, we love watching teams compete in high-stakes tournaments, but we also recognize that there is room for improvement on a more structural level, which, by the way, that sentence was super encouraging for me because we've been asking for that recognition for a long time. So that's huge. While the lack of roster stability and major focal points during the year had its advantages, it has eventually come at the cost of fan engagement and competitive stability for the players. Truer words have never been spoken. The Dota Major Championships. This is the official title. The Dota Major Championships, starting this fall, will be an annual series of 4 marquee tournaments, one being the International. The 3 additional tournaments will be Valve-sponsored events hosted by third-party organizers at different locations around the world. Teams that participate in these events will be required to adhere to limited roster trade periods during the year. I repeat, teams that participate in these events will be required to adhere to limited roster trade periods during the year. More tournament details will be announced. So this is the big news that's sort of like, I mean, saying shaking the Dota 2 world is a big statement, but it sort of does, doesn't it? Because this has ramifications to every aspect of us.
It's not a big statement at all. This is the most significant and, in my view, positive piece of news to come out in the pro Dota 2 scene for a very, very long time. I mean, if I had to compare it to something, it would be to when the TI4 prize pool started getting that big. That's how big this is. It is incredible news, and it's incredibly positive. And that's the kind of what I wanted to lead off with, is that there's a lot of uncertainty about how it's going to work and who's going to win and who's going to lose, and there's certainly tons of questions, and I'm sure we'll have a lively debate about it. But this is a very, very good thing and an entirely necessary step. And I mean, I am drinking a bottle of wine right now to celebrate this. I think it is something that I've wanted to happen for a very long time and hoped would happen for a very long time, and I'm absolutely euphoric that not only the announcement came out, but that it came out the way it did. I mean, you just mentioned how Valve mentioned pretty much verbatim a lot of the concerns that a lot of people in the community had been expressing.
Greg,
I mean, I think it's fairly easy. I think it's a fair. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fairly reasonable conclusion to reach that this is part of what the players were talking to Valve about. I don't know that. I mean, that's just my own speculation, but I know that the players had a lot of issues with tournament formats and with how tournaments were run and all of that stuff. So, I mean, I think this is definitely part of Valve's answer to that. It's definitely encouraging that they at least seem to have some idea that the tournament scene is kind of a disaster right now. So, the other thing I really like about this is, something we always talk about is how the international kind of like destroys the scene. As good as it is, it destroys the scene for 2 months basically, and then afterwards it's disaster as well. So I think that having this is just having these other 3 tournaments with limited trade periods will help just sort of smooth that transition a little bit. I'm sure there'll still be some times like the actual trade periods are going to be nuts, which I'm actually kind of excited for.
Oh,
Those should be
super
really
exciting.
cool.
As a host of a talk show, this is like I'm exuberant.
Yeah, it's pretty neat, to be honest. Overall, I mean, I think it's okay. There are some huge concerns as someone who works for third-party tournaments for me from this, obviously.
Right.
Like, obviously, just inherently, these will cut down on some other tournaments. But, I mean, I don't think that this is to the point where it's like, Dota Pit becomes Dead Pit. I don't think that's as
very
much
important.
of a worry.
Right.
This is not a zero-sum game. That's the number one thing.
This will like cut some stuff. Like there will probably be fewer lands from third parties. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, I was going to say, is that necessarily bad? Because that's the concern that a lot of people had been expressing recently.
I think so. One of the discussions that happens a lot on this show, and we'll go through a couple of things that I've heard from a lot of different guests, and one of them is some of the LAN organizers are frustrated because the online tournaments' profit margins are so much higher, and their ability to execute is significantly easier. So this sort of opens the door, right, to say, let's sort of build on the idea of online tournaments or non-LAN based tournaments like Dota Pit. Do you think that that's true, or do you think that we're still going to see a ton of LANs outside of those 4?
There'll be less lands.
No, I don't think that's true. There aren't that many LANs right now. LANs are not that common. I mean, people act like they are, but major LAN events are not very common relative to. I mean, a lot of tournaments are online anyway.
I mean, the problem is when they come in these like right now. There's there's these spurts.
Well, no, everybody.
Okay.
But part of the reason for that is that Valve they do TI. And they control the scene for 2-3 months out of the year, and then they're basically absent for the other 8 to 9. And so naturally, everybody wants to get their tournament in, kind of in the build up to TI when all the hype is building up, and the compendium's not yet released because nobody wants to be ESL last year, right?
Right.
I mean, it's not even that. It's not even the build up to TI as much as, sure, that is a little bit of the reason, but I can tell you that a lot of it is that ad sales in the summer are much better than ad sales in the winter.
But that's sure. That affects a lot of things, not just Dota.
So I think the LAN is interesting.
Absolutely.
I think the LAN's an interesting situation. Some LANs will thrive, some will fall off. I think that there's an interesting note in here, and that's 3 of them will be run by organizations outside of Valve. I don't know if you guys have been on the show before where I've talked about how this is a system that I've been trying to talk up for a long time.
Look, it's a really big deal because this is Valve. One of their great strengths and weaknesses is that they operate almost entirely horizontally. I mean, there a lot of stuff's written about Valve's business model, that they value people that can kind of do everything. They don't outsource. But that's part of why, I mean, let's be honest, the production values last year at TI4 were very uneven.
Right.
And
pretty unacceptable.
A lot of people had expressed a desire that Valve try to outsource to some extent, and that was the single, other than the fact that Valve are stepping in and finally doing this, which is something that a lot of us have wanted to see for a very long time, the single most encouraging aspect is also that that Valve are going to be partnering for at least 3 of the 4, if not, I have my suspicions, by the way, that TI6 is going to be partnered as well.
Well, and
we'll
theoretically,
get to that later.
theoretically be partnered with 3 organizations that do the individuals. But here's what I think I really like about this idea is we have 3 private organizations that are going to be stepping in. They said different organizations, so 3 different tournaments. Now, we saw in the DAC experience, the Dota Chinese Championships or Dota Asian Championships, that the prize pools can get big outside of TI, and we saw that the events can be large. So in theory, these 4 majors can pool prize pools with compendiums, crowdfunding, and things that are supported directly by Valve in the millions. That means that Valve has the ability, if you fuck up, pardon my French, your tournament that they contracted you for, to pull it and give it to someone else the following year.
Yeah.
And you don't want to lose a $2 million tournament, or you're going back to a $200,000 online tournament. So that means production values will skyrocket at these majors in terms of the organizational availability.
And I actually think, and this will be one of, so I think that there are kind of 3 overarching topics, really 2, and then one that I know the 3 of us will want to talk about. One being who are these organizers going to be, and how are the 4 majors going to be structured. Mm-hmm. 2 being hats, for lack of a better word, and how this is going to impact tournaments that aren't majors. And 3 being just the fact that I think with all of this needs to come some rules and clarity as to how all this is going to be run. But going on the topic of number 1, everybody wants to know who are going to be the 3 organizers outside of TI. And actually,
we know
I actually think TI, a lock is a Perfect World Mars TV is going to host one of them. There's no. People say DAC. DAC was put on by Mars TV, who actually did the organizing, and Perfect World, who did the prize pool. It is a mortal lock that they will do one.
I agree.
I mean, DAC was essentially,
yeah.
I think, a test run for this system to see if it would work. So I think that's a lock-in. The question is, who will handle the other 2? And will they be regionally based organizations, or will it not matter? Will they go to a CIS organization and say, we want you to host a LAN in SEA?
I think that I doubt that. I think that it will be organizations and organizers hosting events in regions that they operate in.
So then the SEA region is out of at least next year.
No, it's not.
Yeah,
What organization is set up for that?
Nexon.
I just don't think so. I don't think they have.
World gets one. Nexon can get one.
I don't think that they have the infrastructure quite. Yeah, it may happen
in Korea.
Next.
They don't have the infrastructure.
Korea's not SEA.
Right.
Yes, it is. They played in the SEA qualifiers. From Valve, they are.
How many teams are Korean?
Not a lot, but that doesn't mean it's not a place you can't host a tournament.
Would
you rather host your tournament Would you rather host your C tournament in South Korea or in Malaysia?
But what is there going to be?
That's not the question. That's not the question. The question is, the question is if there are 2 possible models, in my opinion. Okay, one is you have 2 in NA, TI, and 1 other major, and I realize there would be a lot of outcry about that. But remember, I mean, Valve is a North American company. It is not that ridiculous that we have 2 of these in NA. I realize a lot of people won't like that, but it's got to be said. I think of the 2, I think the more likely model is TI stays in NA. There's going to be 1 EU, 1 in China, and then 1 either CIS or SEA. Yeah. And based on infrastructure and results, I think it's probably going to be Eastern Europe.
Right. Well, I think based on history since the beginning, 11 tournaments that have by and large gone off without too much trouble, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 admin issues and some other payout stuff in the past. StarLadder seems poised to control a CIS tournament.
Right.
And they are definitely making a statement for that. Somebody talk to them, because this StarLadder is 100% advertising for that spot. Like they amped up. If you look at production value,
I mean, it's a new venue, like
right. But if you look at it versus last time, it's amazing, night and day.
Dream League is advertising for that spot too, right? And that's the thing to me is that Dream League and StarLadder are kind of in competition in that regard, because right below I said I felt like Perfect World Mars TV is a lock for one of them. I feel like ESL is getting awfully close. They're like near lock status for a Western European event, in my view.
Yeah, I mean, so who else is on the list? ESL.
I think so, probably, yeah.
front
I
runners.
mean,
are what?
look at the event.
ESL
The
is
recent
like their
event in
event-
Poland was a huge
Frankfurt
success
is-
for CS:GO, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was good.
How do you pronounce the city name
It was
again?
really good. Katowice.
Katowice. Yeah, I always get that wrong. But yeah, Katowice was it just a? I don't know if any. I've never played a game.
I watched it. I
at
love
CS:GO,
It's
and I watched that tournament, and I was nailed to my seat. Like I don't understand
I mean,
CS:GO for shit.
Now,
And
yeah,
that tournament was
CS:GO,
amazing.
This is like kind of related to what I was saying earlier, but CS:GO is such an easier game at the
Sure.
core to understand than
Sure.
Dota that even
it's
as
not-
someone like you can, yeah,
it's
like
harder
you
to
just
watch.
said,
I think it's
you're
harder to
nailed
watch
your
CS:GO.
seat. You don't even
than it
understand.
is. I think it's harder to watch CS:GO than it is. to
Well, I
watch
mean,
Dota.
it's
Oh.
maybe a little bit harder to keep track of like the overarching part of what's going on around, but you can appreciate individual plays a lot.
Well,
more.
and-
I
But if
have
you're just-
I have never installed
Bam.
that game on a machine,
I've-
and I was yelling at my monitor during the finals.
really.
No shit. I mean, I'm
I
an
could keep up
excitable
with it.
person, but
I gotta give up
Like-
with it.
oh my god, that was amazing.
So let me ask you this. Let me pose this question. MLG has
The other thing is I think ESL is a near lock because they already host CS majors.
right.
Yes.
So I think next
Kinda what I was
next
saying,
seasons are pretty close to finalized, right? I think Star Ladder is going to be in fight with DreamHack.
No,
ESL's right there. But here's my question. Let me ask you this. MLG has made a comeback in the last 6 months. They put on a huge tournament in Columbus to show that they can. They signed to get Dota 2 to Austin X Games to show that they can do another LAN there. Do you think Seattle, when I say Seattle, I mean Valve, who has a relationship with MLG in terms of their CSGO experiences and a lot of those other things, CSGO, MLG, hand in hand, do you think that they have a shot at stealing one of those majors because they're known for their production value?
So, and again, I'm heavily biased, so I'll let Greg do the talking on most of this, because obviously I just did my first LAN with MLG and had a great time, and those guys are amazing. If I had my way, okay, the way this would work would be MLG would run TI.
I mean, they've got a lot of experience.
My only issue, I don't think this is like a huge issue, but it's definitely worth saying that MLG has hosted a lot of LANs, to be sure, but the biggest scale of a LAN they've ever done is a convention center. So they've never held an ESL Frankfurt. I don't
Greg,
think,
I've talked to you about this.
This is like a.
I've talked to you
I don't
about
think
this
is a big
before.
deal.
If it's not, and I'll tell you why. I this is one thing, not to come across as whatever arrogant or whatever. I for a living I train people to do business. Okay, Adam is one hell of a business guy. He knows his stuff. That organization, I would trust to do an event on a very, very large scale.
I'm also
they
gonna
they know their shit.
I'm also going to throw
Period.
this out there, and this may seem foreign when you look at production value and who they give it to, but there's one important factor that we did not bring up in this, and it is tournaments who have pre-existing contracts with casting houses. Valve, if they give all three tournaments to one casting house, will effectively run one into a really tough situation.
That
If
can't
you look-
happen.
If you look at it with MLG has a signature with Join Dota, Starladder signed
Right.
with BTS, and DreamHack has just established their own English casting house, essentially 2GD or whatever they want to call it now. Because I know that James is still involved with that house specifically. He's I don't know if he's paying for it, but I know that they go to his house pretty regularly. So it sounds to me like there's three distinct English studios that have sort of been set up synonymously with this announcement.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably. I think probably what's going to happen is that BTS will get the English cast for the Chinese event. And who knows what, honestly, who knows what will happen with that. I was kind of going to talk about this later because when we got to talking about the impact on other tournaments and hats, I was going to talk about the fact that I think it's just really super crucial in all of this that the people that help build the scene and get the scene to this point get taken care of.
Right.
And that includes the casting houses. And, right now, so Join Dota is, in theory, in a better position in some regards with all this because their model from the beginning has been we don't want to host events ourselves. We want to partner with organizers that are going to host events, and we want to do the casting.
Right.
And BTS has been a bit more, we're going to host the summit. We're going to take a little bit more hands-on approach in the production. And
I just want to say, there's definitely a difference in model there, both, what they do. And, I mean, you have to understand that it costs BTS a lot of money.
yes,
to run,
yes. And that's the thing.
So
I will be, and people have this idea that JD and BTS are at odds, and for sure probably they have been in the past. That relationship is fine now. I will be the first one throwing an absolute shit fit if I feel like BTS gets screwed in all this. The first one.
So
I mean, there's.
Go ahead.
Never mind.
Okay.
I was going to say it's possible that. Yeah, never mind.
So I'm going to jump in here real quick because we need to take a quick break. We've talked a little bit about houses getting involved, talent being protected. Moving forward, what regions will be picking up the majors? When we come back, we're going to talk about the need for rules, a little bit about the trade blocking and how what that means for Dota, as well as, and I think it's something that a lot of us have overlooked from reading the Twitter account and stuff, is how this new system protects sponsors and organizations who sponsor teams. So we'll talk about that in just a minute, because right now we're going back with a word from our sponsors. We'll be back shortly.
Razer Comms is a free all-in-one communication tool that allows you to stay in touch with friends both in and out of the game. With features such as friendless, groups, mobile SMS forwarding, and call notifications, Razer Comms is a communication solution for the dedicated gamer. Razer Comms' minimal in-game overlay has a panel that grabs all your messages and lets you see who is speaking in a voice call without interrupting your game.
Now I'll always know who's breathing into the mic.
It's always me.
By pairing Razer Comms Mobile with your PC, your friends can call you, no matter where you are.
All right, we're back, and this is Coffee with Toffees, live brought to you by Razer, Betway, and MM1.FM. We're happy to have our sponsors here, and I'm joined by Alan Bester and Greg What Is Hip Laird to talk about the new invites, the announcement that the majors are going to be running Dota going forward. Guys, let's talk about the need for rules briefly. I actually did a show where I had Bruno Tomas. A lot of folks got mad at me. They're like, misadvertising. It wasn't the real Bruno. He's also a real Bruno, guys. We also have Skim on a lot talk about this. The importance of clarity, the importance of rules. I know a lot of tournaments, What Is Hip, a year tournament, Dota Pit, is known for having a pretty large rule book, for really trying to be prepared for everything. How important is that rule book going to be for the majors, and when does it need to be released?
I mean, it needs to be really released as soon as possible, like right after TI. I mean, as soon as you want to implement this system. I mean, to the best of my knowledge, TI doesn't really have a rule book, which is kind of ridiculous. But in the past, in the past, the rulebook for TI has basically been, if it's in the game, you can do it, which is probably not ideal. But I mean, it's not that hard to come up with a pretty robust rule set that is not basically you just need clarification on common practices, pause times, scheduling punishments. It's not hard to build a rule set that is decent.
Yeah,
Right.
To be fair, it's actually a lot easier in my mind to have a rule set for a Holy Land event. But honestly, let's this is going to be a really short conversation because I don't think there's much other to say on the topic besides it is 100% absolutely necessary. If you're going to do this and people are going to take it seriously, you have to have very clear and published rules, and you have to talk. Those rules also have to talk about what qualifies you for invites to these majors.
Right.
Because right now, we're a week out from TI invites, and we have no real idea how many invites they're going to be,
Right.
how they're determined, how the qualifiers are going to work, how they're going to be structured, why the hell they aren't on LAN. I mean, no idea.
Well, you don't know if they're not going to be on LAN.
Yeah, we also don't know.
I have heavy suspicions that they will be on LAN.
the majors.
I don't know. That's a completely
Really? That was okay. I mean, we know one of them will be.
Oh,
Look at it this way.
We know China's will be. Right?
Okay, so this is something we're actually talking about yesterday with Travis. And if you think about it, they've said that there's going to be a week for the qualifiers.
Mm-hmm.
How in the hell do you do 4 regions of qualifiers in 1 week? You'd literally have to run a broadcast for 24 hours a day.
It's not.
Okay, that would literally be the stupidest thing they've ever done if they did that. If they made it so it was like, now's the NA one, now's the EU one, now's the China and SCA one, like, have fun. Hope you don't have to sleep for a week.
Gerg, I'm sorry. Like, let me
That would be so fucked up.
let me put it to you this way. Like, as happy as I am with Valve right now, and as elated as I am about this announcement, if you had made a list of all the stupid things that Valve had done with the Dota 2 tournament scene over the last 2 or 3 years, it'd be a long list.
Right, and hopefully the major system will help alleviate that a little bit.
Right. That's
and that's kind of the benefit.
My
of it.
only reason I'm saying that I think the other reason is that CS:GO had offline qualifiers for Katowice. So
I mean,
I'm very hopeful.
I hope so. Like, I hope you're right.
It's not even region based.
All I will
just a
tell
bracket.
you, and I've learned, like, this is weird now. I actually, like, have to start being careful about what I frickin' say, because up until this point, I had...
you piece of sellout.
No, up until this point, I had religiously avoided becoming an insider in any way. Because I hate drama. I don't care most of the time. Like, I like Dota, I like strategy. But now that I'm actually, like, talking to people at LANs, I will say this, though. If the
So
TI
what you're saying is you're
qualifiers-
becoming bitch mid.
Yeah, pretty much. If the
cool.
TI qualifiers end up being offline this year, it will be a surprise, at least to everybody that I've talked to.
Now, so we
I mean, it will be a surprise, but
I
I
want to get us back on track,
I'm
boys. We
hopeful
moved
too.
a little bit away from the rule set, so let's.
But it's that's an easy top. Like, it
Well,
has to happen.
here's
or
where-
it has
has
to
to be
here's
rules.
what I wanna
They
ask
all
you, though.
have to be the same.
Yeah, so
if they're not
hold
all
on,
the same,
hold
then
on.
it's stupid.
Bear with me. The rules have to be the same for general gameplay, things like that. But here's my question. When we talk about other sports, there's a lot of other rules that come into play here. We're going to have trade windows. We're going to have lock-ins. Are we going to have salary caps? Are we going to have spending
No.
amounts? Are we
No,
going
not
to equalize
yet.
teams? Not yet. Do you
No.
think it's on the horizon?
No.
Maybe. I mean, don't say no. Like,
All right.
maybe in another year or two, but
So-
we're nowhere near there now.
That's number one. Number
And
two.
the thing about Dota you need to understand is stuff. This is like, it's like following other major sports, but stuff happens 10 times more quickly.
So here's number
Like,
two for me.
the landscape a year from now, because of this, could be radically different.
This is important. This is a big question for me. Right now, earnings, pay salaries, deals, things like that are set up between players and sponsors and teams is completely off the record. It's a lot of contracts say you can't talk about what your contract says. Every other pro sport, when a player signs with a team, their contract is released to the public pretty quickly. We know how much a player signs for, do we not?
You can't really put that comparison. You can't draw right now because a lot of the things when we're talking about U.S. pro sports, a lot of the things are the way they are because of the major U.S. pro sports have antitrust exemptions, and so the government has a pretty broad say in some of the things that they do. Like, that's the reason that Congress can call Major League Baseball up and say, you guys all have to testify about steroids. Right, is because they have an antitrust exemption, and that's sort of the power. There's no antitrust exemption here involved yet, so that it's there's no reason to believe that anything will be regulated or public record just yet. That may be one of the steps that Valve chooses to just take.
Makes sense. All right, so I was just curious about those. Those are the two things. As far as trade windows and team transfers, do you guys have any idea or guesses what you think that's going to look like? Is it going to be one super window after TI? Is it going to look more like soccer or European sports, which is a super window followed by a mid window halfway through the season? So I don't know if you guys follow Premier League, but what they do is after the season ends, you have a break period. Then you have your trading window, which lasts about, I think it's a month and a week, if I remember correctly. And then you go through half of your season. And then mid-season, right around the halfway point, there is a 2-week trade window to shore up your teams for the back end of the push. Do you think that that's something we're going to see, or do you?
No, I think it'll.
Not quite
I mean,
that structured.
I think it would probably just be. I imagine it more as like a, after a major, you have 1 month to make trades or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's going to end up being, 4 to 5 months out of the year will be sort of trade safe, and
Gotcha.
6 or so months out of the year will be trade locked.
So with that in mind, do you think a lot of fans complain to me regularly that it's hard for them to buy into Pro Dota right now because you don't know what the team's going to look like in 6 weeks? Do you think this will fix that, or not really?
I mean,
What do you
it depends
mean
how
by
strict they are.
fix? Yeah.
I mean, like Cloud9 has had a very similar roster for
Right.
the last. Player changes are still going to happen. I mean,
Yeah.
it's possible that your favorite player leaves your team. I mean,
Are we gonna have teams wholesale? Like, are we gonna have teams wholesale just breaking up and reforming? There's gonna be less of that.
Right.
Are we gonna have Zai and RTZ leaving EG for Secret? That's
that's
gonna
my
happen.
thing. It's like the
That's
tier one
still
teams
gonna happen.
the tier one teams were pretty stable, and like things like that are definitely still going to happen. Like after major, that's going to
But
happen.
look, this
like,
is the same. This is the same discussion
this-
that we had
this
many
doesn't help.
years ago about baseball and about football. Is everybody's a free agent now. We don't have any loyalty to the teams anymore because our favorite players are going to play with one team his whole career. You know what? You adapt.
Right.
I mean, the other thing, right, is like a lot of people's complaints are about like tier 1.5, tier 2 teams that probably aren't even going to be locked into this major system because they won't be qualified or whatever.
So here's my take on this, and this is a good transition to de-incentivizing T1 teams for playing in other tournaments. Is right now there's a little bit of a struggle if you're a T2 team. T1.5 is not as much to get in front of people, to be seen, to make it into those LAN events. Do you think that this system will actually make it easier to a certain extent for those tier 2 teams to get discovered and potentially get bids? Because can you argue EG and Secret, for instance, may not play in tournaments that are not the 4 majors? If the prize pools are $2 million, why would I play in a $200,000
No,
tournament?
they'll still play.
Yeah,
They'll
there's-
still
think so?
play.
Yeah.
Why?
Absolutely.
Why? Because here's the question.
Because they're not because if they just fuck off and go on vacation for a month after a major,
not gonna be any good.
Majors very long. Like
Yeah.
you have to play in tournaments to stay competitive. Scrimming
Right.
doesn't cut it
Right.
because especially when you got people like fucking Artor who can't take scrim seriously for his life.
So you
I'm
think,
not gonna say anything about that, but I agree with Greg's major point.
so you think that the tier 1 teams will continue to play in the other
Yeah,
tournaments?
I mean,
if
they'll play
only
in
to
less.
keep themselves.
I think
safe?
it's they will
way
play less,
They
but
will be super particular.
it is but they're already starting to be super
Yeah, I
particular.
mean, EG is already a
Right.
huge pain in the ass to get in their
Well,
tournament.
is this and then now the next
Sorry,
step is
Charlie.
this? Is this going to cost you money? So we can probably go on a limb and say Dota Pit's not going to be one of the 4 majors picked for next year.
Yeah, of course not.
Now,
No.
let's say EG, just for the sake of argument, because most of the fans here of the show follow EG as a North American team. They're going to pick and choose the tournaments they play in that are not the majors. Is there going to get to a point where Dota Pit's going to have to put up a bounty to get EG to choose their tournament over another? For you to say our prize pool's 200,000, but we'll guarantee you 30,000 to play in this.
No. That's actually part of the. That's actually one of the really nice things about all this is that because of the increased presence, because of the fact that Valve is going to be overtly running the 4 major tournaments, and hopefully, God help us, releasing a clarified rule set, Valve has the ability to step in now credibly and say, no, you can't do that. And that's one of the things that I hope that they will do is there are no appearance fees.
But they won't have control over smaller tournaments that are not part of the majors, correct? I mean, what we're talking
They
about.
can say,
it's- it's their world,
they don't
brother.
have control, but they can say, "Oh, sorry, your ticket didn't make it in."
If we catch
Yeah.
wind of a bounty,
And then
No,
you're completely fucked.
no. That's the point. Is that right now in this world, that's the only level of control they have. They are ticket approvers. Period. There are many more avenues of control that this opens. For example, one particular model, and to me, this system is a failure if every tournament outside the 4 majors becomes a qualifier.
right?
Like, why would EG play in this tournament? Because they're already going to get invited, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
This is a success if it becomes like the conference tournaments in college basketball. That, you know what? You win this tournament, you're guaranteed a spot.
Now,
So EG there are certain tournaments that get designated, look, there are X spots in these majors, and we as Valve get to pick a certain number of tournaments that if you win this tournament, you get an automatic bid.
so let me
But
ask
then
you
the
this.
other tournaments are designated, the other bids are decided upon by committee or some other set of rules. Valve now has a much better ability to control what goes on in some of these high tier 2 tournaments.
So you think a
I'm
point
not sure.
system?
I'm not sure it will be that structured. I'm not sure.
It
I
probably
don't think it will
won't
be
at
that
first.
structured.
It probably won't at first, but I actually think that's. I hope that's what we're going to end up moving.
Well,
towards.
I mean, I could definitely see Valve out of the go say if you win one of the majors, you get an automatic invite. The question
I
is,
mean,
will we then
traditionally,
see-
how in the CS:GO majors, if you win a major, you're like guaranteed a spot in the next one. Basically, I think even if you get, I think it's traditionally like top 2 or top 3 or something are just like guaranteed invites for the
So
most
then the next
part.
question is, though, for the direct invites versus TI qualifiers, if the format continues that way, do we then see like a point system set up for the rest of the team? So if you get 6th place in Major 1 and 5th place in Major 2, your combined points determine whether or not you get invited to the big show. And on the same token,
I mean, that's a great model, but I don't think that's going to happen out of the gate.
and
Yeah,
the same
exactly.
token is, can Valve potentially designate non-major tournaments as qualifier bait potentially for up-and-coming
That
tier
would
2 teams?
if they do that, I will be very, very angry.
Okay. Do you think that's a possibility? Is that on the table?
I mean, I don't know. That literally just like marginalizes tournaments when they do that.
I think that's a bad idea.
Mm-hmm.
I think the best model is one like Hoops, where we say, look, we're going to designate certain tournaments as being sort of high tier 2, whatever name premium, whatever name you want to use, and winning those tournaments gets you an automatic bid into the next major. But that other than that, that'll be like 4 spots for each major. But then the other, 8 to 12 are either qualified or determined by committee.
At the end of the day, it's something where this system implies to me that some sort of committee, some sort of voting process, something is going to have to exist to establish the teams that get invites. Because by what you said,
But theoretically, it already does, right?
Right.
I mean, how are
that's
how are
already
TI
exactly how it
five
is
right?
now.
Right. How are
They- I
TI
mean, they
five
don't-
invited?
I don't know.
It's not
How
quite
are they
pulling
invited?
names out of a hat, but
How-
I mean, it's just a bunch of people who decide who gets invited.
like, who are these people? Do you guys know if it's the Shadow Mafia? Is it TI Valve offices where they're just like, what's
That's what
up?
do you think?
There's no TI Valve office. It's fucking Ice Frog and the Dota team.
Right.
Gotcha.
Right.
So
There's no like TI team. Like, there's no special TI department at Valve. It's you can work on TI if you want to.
to work at Valve. I mean, it's something where it would be nice to have a published list that teams can track what their perception is for moving into those tournaments. But I think that's.
I think you're
down the line.
asking. This is, dude. We're
Not
already
even,
like,
yeah.
like Valve is
not
already.
even the
this is
selection
like,
committee does that.
I look to
in
the future,
NCAA.
man. I look to the future.
well, Valve is. I don't. You're expecting too much out of them.
No, you honestly, the equal. If you think about this in terms of game theory, the equilibrium here is you actually want a certain amount of uncertainty, because you want to incentivize
True.
tier 1 teams, all teams, to play their best in every tournament they enter.
That makes sense.
Yeah, because if you win this tournament, you get a major, then that team can just be like, all right, peace, boys, we're out.
No, I think that's fine actually, but
Ugh,
I think
don't like that.
I think
Well,
that's
let's also-
fine.
I imagine a world where a team wins one of those tournaments and
Well,
they just drop out of all the
no,
other.
let's-
because this is not again, this is something that we've been talking about recently on Twitter and elsewhere regarding TI invites, is that the major invites and TI invites don't just depend on the season
Right.
since the last major.
Well, let's
They
also
depend on sustained performance.
And let's-
so fine, you qualified for the next major, but you might not qualify for the major after that. You still need to keep bolstering your resume.
Well, be honest though. How many of those smaller tournaments? So let's say Dota Pit's a big tournament, big prize pool, big names. If they came and they say the winner of Dota Pit gets an automatic bid to the 3rd major of the year, how many times out of Dota Pit's plays throughout the year is it not going to be won by a team who's already going to be invited to a major?
But that's fine. The point
Right, that's what I'm saying. So it's not supposed to be a huge issue.
Most of the teams that win conference tournaments in college basketball would have qualified for the
Right.
NCAA tournament anyway. But teams still play their asses off
Absolutely.
because it's a lot more than just the one automatic bid that's at
Right.
stake.
Absolutely. So let's talk about hats. We'll keep moving.
Well, so to answer how we actually started this conversation,
Okay.
from the perspective of Dota Pit,
Sure.
part of the reason that our tournament has all the top teams in it is because it has a flexible format and
Right.
because it has good prize support because the hats are good, which is the next topic. But I think that for these smaller tournaments, it's just going to come down to quality of administration. How easy is it to work with a tournament? Because some tournaments are much harder to work with than others. Even taking Dota out of the equation, I've worked with a lot of tour organizers, and some of them are shit, and some of them are good, and the ones that are shit will no longer
always
have
gonna
good
be
teams
true.
in them.
Yep.
Yeah, of course. But I'm just saying that now that this major system is sort of in place, those top tier teams will just stop playing in those tournaments, and they
Yeah.
already kind of have, like you
No,
mentioned.
to me,
mean-
this accelerates that process.
Yeah,
which is a
exactly. It
good
just makes
thing.
it faster. I think it's fine.
I think, like I said,
It's like either get on the good level or just fucking leave.
No,
because-
that's to me, and this kind of brings us to the next sort of entry in our conversation, and that's that a lot of people, justifiably so, are worried what this does to tournaments like Dota Pit, like the Summit, like Dota Cinema XMG Captains Draft. And
I worry more about like the star ladders and the summits than
I actually think that this could be a very good thing for those tournaments, because to me, right now, the scene is very flat, and as Dota Pit, as Star, you are trying to differentiate yourself from just a huge number of observationally equivalent alternative tournaments, and not everybody that is buying a ticket in the client or looking at hats and buying items is familiar with who's reliable, who's contributed to the scene, who actually has decent teams and puts on good games.
dude, those
They're
people
just-
have. The people who are buying hats buy them because they're fucking hats, dude.
Right.
Nothing
So-
to do with the teams or the tournaments.
To me, though, this makes it so that if you're not one of the majors, you've got to do something to deliver value to make yourself different. And yes, part of that is hats, but part of it's not too. And
I mean,
think
hats
actually,
are just in terms of like esports. Hats are just prize pool. Like, I don't know.
yeah,
Hats are.
and that's
Yeah.
important.
But I think
important, yeah.
I think Nahaz makes a good point that so what we're going to have is majors and potentially run-ups and group stages. So let's say a major takes a month to operate. That means that you're going to have these 2 to 3 month periods between majors where anybody else who wants to run something like a summit experience is going to have to sort of get that in there. And there's going to theoretically right out of the gate be a lot of competition for those 2 months, kind of like we're seeing in the run-up to TI.
Sort of like right now.
Exactly. So the question is, will hats? I mean, hats will grow the prize pool, but in order to get the viewership on things like Twitch, to get the sponsors to support the tournament, you're gonna have to find something that sets you apart, right? You're gonna have to be the
Right.
tournament that people choose to watch during that congested period.
And,
So-
and I think that's where
That's not true. That's
You don't
not
think
true.
so?
Viewers don't watch. Viewers, I think, for the most part, are not loyal to tournaments.
I think they're
don't
loyal. To,
think- No,
I
that's-
think they're
that's
loyal to
very true.
production value. I think they're loyal to production value, not
I
tournaments.
mean, it
they're
might
loyal to
give
production
you-
value and people that are doing something
Yeah, but
interesting.
Bam.
to be honest, even if we say like for online only tournaments, we have Dota Pit we have better production than any other online tournament, sure. But like that
Easily.
that's not even. But that doesn't really like. I don't think that's enough for us to get like. I mean, it is for like a very small percentage. It's enough to get a very small percentage of people who are like, well, it's Dota Pit. Of course, I'm going to watch it. That's not really a. People don't have to pick the tournament they're going to watch. is what
Wait
I'm
a
trying to
minute
say.
though. Are you saying that if Dota Pit came back for season 4 and you guys your production sucked ass, that people would not watch?
I mean, well,
Yeah, that's
if
true.
it's if it's like sucked ass, yeah. But like, if season 4 we didn't have instant replay, people would still watch Dota.
Well,
Pit.
here's my contention, though. If Dota Pit went head-to-head with MLG Columbus, which there were a couple of games where I think you did, people are going to watch MLG Columbus because of the LAN system.
No, people are going to watch Dota Pit because it's on Twitch.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair. Well, that's okay.
That's 100% true.
Bad example, my bad, slap my hand. But the point is that if you put up an online tournament versus something like the Summit, will fans choose the Summit because of a live production value
Yes.
over an online tournament?
Yes.
As long as the games aren't like overwhelmingly tilted in terms of like one is like Secret versus EG and one is like London Conspiracy versus Balkan Bears, yeah, people will
Which
definitely
is the
watch
advantage
Live
that the online tournament will have, right? Because you can get tier 1 teams who maybe don't want to travel between lands but still want to play in a tournament.
But it's not just about online versus offline, although obviously that plays a huge role in the discussion. This is about the single biggest problem
true.
that I had with all of this was that there was zero incentive
Yeah.
before this for tournaments to add value other than hats. Zero.
agree.
The incentives in the system where you go and you find the coolest hats that you can, and you get some teams and you put some games on, and F whatever else happens because it's all hats.
Well,
I mean, there is now at least some incentive to me to add some value beyond hats. And look, a lot of people in the chat, and very smartly so, are mentioning that, by the way, another looming issue is that we got to fix Dota TV.
Yeah.
We actually have to make it so that Dota TV doesn't suck ass compared to Twitch. And that's a huge issue. It has to be addressed.
I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't want to be that's such a tall order.
that's a huge order.
Like,
How is it a tall
like,
order?
because
Why is that a tall order?
I mean,
Yeah,
because they built
it's a
it
tall
because
order
from
relative
the
to what's
start-
going on.
Yeah, because from the start, it's like such a simple, like it's missing so much stuff that
Why?
like
well,
because it started as just a game viewing platform.
Well,
which is wrong.
most importantly, I think we can agree that it's missing the ability for the organizations to increase revenue that they already get. Like they're not going to replace lost Twitch revenue from sponsors on Dota TV.
Twitch revenue
so-
is so insignificant.
I'm not
compared
talking
to-
about Twitch revenue in the sense of hitting a button. I'm talking about sponsor banners behind the announcers during analysts,
Sure,
panels,
yeah.
sponsors behind,
Sure,
having the
yep.
fact that
Exposure,
you're
yeah.
wearing a T-shirt, that you're promoting a commercial of your own design instead of the Twitch ad that's run during major tournaments.
Yeah, well, yeah. So what you're saying is none of that monetization comes over to the tournaments in Dota
Which
TV.
is true.
Right, and that I
that's
think is
definitely
one of
an
the
issue.
huge problems, because then you start to lose incentive of sponsors, you start to lose incentives to come on board. If I know that 60,000 people,
Why are we convinced that there cannot be some
I mean,
kind
I think-
of in-client exposure?
I mean,
there
that
can.
I guess there can, but it doesn't seem
Yeah.
like that's ever been Valve's model for.
No,
in-client
look,
exposure.
this is the other part about this.
This is the problem: is that Dota TV is so overwhelmingly like it's so bad.
No, it
does
sucks.
nothing.
Look, you will find nobody more furious than me, and I think the perfect example of this is this is probably not the smart thing for me to do, but I'm going to be really hard on Valve here. The perfect example of this is the way Valve took BTS's wonderful Teamfight Recap tool, which they had spent their own time and their own money creating. Okay? They imported an inferior version of that tool into Dota TV,
right.
and they never touched it afterward. Like, that pisses me off beyond my ability to fully articulate. Like, that's the kind of stuff that that can't happen.
Yeah,
That was
No,
pretty. That was one of the more.
It was
That was awful.
bullshit.
Yeah, there was a lot of. I won't speak for BTS, but there was some unhappy campers.
Oh,
as you could
I
probably
would
imagine.
have been. I would have been screaming.
Yeah, I would
if
have
I
been
worked-
fucking irate, dude. I would have lost it. I mean, I lose it about small things, but that really would have fucking pushed me. I mean, they spent a lot of money on that tool. Like, we've put some, we've put a significant amount of time into some stuff from Dota Pit. I mean, a lot of it is not as like groundbreaking as Teamfight Recap, sure, but like, we've added really small stuff to make like mobile viewing experience better. Like
Right.
when a hero casts an ult, the ultimate icon pops up under the hero. A lot of people don't even notice that because it's such a small change. But when you watch on mobile, it actually makes a pretty
Well,
big difference.
By the way, that's actually something you guys needed to advertise that a bit more, because it's a great feature. It's a really cool feature. And I actually would have, that was one of the things that I think I meant to mention to you, and I never did, is that you actually should have had the casters point that out a little bit more. But anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is, my biggest problems, and it's related to some of the stuff that I said before, was that not only were we stagnating, but the things that we needed to grow the scene going forward were actually being disincentivized.
Yeah.
Like what Valve did with BTS's Teamfight replay is a huge disincentive to studios to innovate.
Right.
And I think we may be back on the path where there are actually some incentives to deliver value now.
Right. No, I agree with that.
I mean,
well, I
so
think-
what do you mean by, okay, so my question is like, do you mean just in terms of being able to capture viewership during that small period between, I mean, the other thing is I don't think majors will be a month. Majors will be a week.
Oh, they better be a week. Like,
Okay.
Yeah, they're not going to be a month. If
So-
majors are a month, everything will get fucked.
oh
Okay.
God, oh my God, that's Armageddon.
So majors will be
Yeah, that
majors
would
will
be
be a
so
week. There'll be some downtime. There'll still be competition between smaller tournaments, And there is an incentive, like I said at the
I
beginning.
mean, that's
of
a lot of downtime. Majors are just like a marquee event. The way
Right.
it works in CS:GO,
Let me be
CS:GO
clear.
CS:GO has other events, but majors give you a really cool storyline to track the progress
Right.
of teams.
Yes.
3 majors ago, Cloud9 was amazing. Last major, they were a
Right.
fucking embarrassment.
Yes.
Their roster is in shambles now.
And that if you look at almost any other sport, that's
Right.
what frames the discussion.
Right.
It's what
Yeah.
frames the
It's a way-
discussion in
it
golf,
gives you
in
timeline.
tennis. Yep.
Yeah, no, and I think that there's been an argument, or we've said a few times, that storyline is a thing that really is tough to track in Dota 2, that is missing in a lot of the large tournaments. The idea of like being able to sort of follow these arcs of teams. I think that's going to be great for the majors. I think the other thing that we talk about, you brought it up, Naha, is the idea that this is going to force other tournaments to step up their game and production, because if a sanctioned major drops the ball, which could potentially happen if they don't come through, and Valve needs to pick someone else to take over the torch the next year, they're going to pick whoever's putting on the best non-major LAN. So there's going to be an incentive to be doing
Dude,
that.
I honestly don't see any of those organizations fucking up a major so bad that happens.
No,
Like,
that's
you would have to fuck it up so bad. Like,
Yep.
I don't even know what would have to happen. Like, because most of those organizers have done so many events that like
Right.
shit like not showing up to events on time from teams is just like not a thing that happens. And if Valve is supporting the prize or supporting and sponsoring it in some way and give them any sort of like money towards that, you can be pretty sure that won't really be an issue.
Now,
I will
go
play
ahead.
a bit of devil's advocate, and I will say, look at what happened with Dream League Season 2.
Right.
Dream League Season 2 is
But
special.
I think where
I
Greg's argument,
honestly,
where Greg's argument is valid is,
I don't think
if
Dream League is an
knows-
organizer that I would give a major to at this
But
point.
if
unless
the
the season's
organizer
way better.
knows that their asses could be grass and they could lose this massive tournament, Dream League
guess,
Season
yeah,
2 will
but-
never happen. Right? Because nobody will
mean-
fund
Okay,
it.
but let's make sure before we because we're going to end up running a little bit long anyway. But let's make sure that before we end up ending and leaving this out, it's important that we talk a little bit more specifically about hats.
Okay.
Okay, because there's this idea that there are going to be more immortals now, because every one of the majors is going to get their immortals. And part of the concern that's been expressed to me on Twitter and privately is, gosh, there are going to be all these immortals associated with all the majors. Are non-major tournaments like the Summit 3, like SMG, like Dota Pit, going to be able to sell their hats?
Yeah, I mean, I think they will. I
So,
think
Greg, go.
I mean, it's hard to say. Like, honestly,
Okay.
I mean, my thing is, it kind of depends, right? Like, if I mean, I could see it's possible that if all of those events have immortals out for like 2 months or whatever, then it could mess up other hat stuff. Like, if you look at like the Dota Pit prize pool graph, it's like pretty linear for the vast majority, and even though there was DAC and crap like kind of near that, and other LAN tournaments with other packages, like I don't know, this like kind of concerns me. I think what would concern me more if it was like you can only get this quality of item if you're a major. That would be bad. Like, I mean, immortals, I mean, part of my issue now is like part of the reason that Dota Pit has such a huge prize pool is, I mean, it has a good compendium and a good chest, a pretty good chest. And the
It's a
issue
really
now
good
moving
chest.
forward is that like compendiums are going to become much more common. Chests are even going to become much more common moving forward. So I get a little bit worried in that sort of like frame of, if there are 3 chests out at once, then that model becomes a lot less viable.
Well, you got
So-
you got to manage the chests, and this is part of the thing that we learned from ESL One Frankfurt last year, is that timing really matters, and you got to manage the sequencing and the timing and the in-client advertising of these chests. Like, ESL One got so screwed hardcore last year that their stuff got delayed big time and got introduced at about the same time as the TI4 compendium. And going forward, this is another thing that if you're serious about making the major system work without screwing a lot of the smaller tournaments, the workshop system needs to be streamlined. It needs to, the timing of items
Dude,
needs to be more
workshop shit
optimized.
is so fucked,
It is,
honestly. Like,
but again,
the amount of tournaments that get absolutely hosed purely
Right.
because of just like random ass delays
Right.
that are not their fault is like unreal. Like there's this huge like, and I mean, I don't even know if I can directly. I mean, I guess I can directly blame Valve for some of it, but like, there's just like this huge communication gap where it's like, I'll be honest and say that for Dota Pit, we have had the 250K prize pool submitted fucking like 3 times.
Yep.
And it's the first time they were like, it's great. They looked at the concepts, it's great, and then it got denied because it didn't fit or whatever. And then it happened, and then we gave them a new one. They're like, it's good, and it got submitted, and then it got fucking denied again and pushed out of the store. And you know, now we kind of had to start again. We basically had to start fucking over. And now we're like getting heat. It's like, where's the 250K prize pool? It's like, well, if it didn't take them a month to deny our fucking item 2 days before the tournament's supposed to start, maybe we'd have one.
I want to
But
read
it's like,
something.
oh my god, it's enraging.
I want to read something that Skim just posted in chat because I think that this kind of sums up my opinion perfectly. I think the biggest challenge for Valve is that this major system demands a bigger degree of communication and transparency in Dota 2 even than in CS:GO. And I completely agree with
CS:GO,
that.
I mean, the CS:GO market is so much less
It's easier.
in terms of like, you know, there's literally all there is cases and stickers.
Yep.
That is all there is.
Yep.
And in Dota 2, that it is way more complicated than that. And you know, it's positive because as an organizer, you have much better routes to directly monetize your tournament. But it's negative because there does not seem to be the support that you need to actually run that correctly. Because it is so fucked. Like every tournament I interact with are like it's always a problem. It's never we submitted our items, they went right in, it was great. No, nope, never, ever. You know,
I mean,
like some tournaments don't have their fucking hats from last year, literally. Like D2L still does not have their set in the game from last year.
Yeah, look, and that's the thing. To me, look, I'm the eternal optimist, okay? I think that this is potentially great, but there are a lot of things that need to be fixed and need to be cleaned up if this is going to work. To me, this is a necessary step for the scene
Like,
to keep
let's
going and
be
moving
honest.
forward, but there's a lot of work to do.
Let's be honest. If this is implemented badly,
Oh,
it could completely fuck up everything.
okay, but Greg,
Like, everyone could get fucked.
Greg, we were honestly. Let me be completely frank. Like I didn't feel like I was able to before. We were fucked going forward before.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's true.
We were fucked.
It's not like, but now we've transferred. It's possible we've transferred cars to another one that's also heading off a cliff.
Okay, but the previous car was
There's a fork in the road now, at least.
Right. There's a fork in the road where the Dota 2 scene grows and is very healthy going forward and achieves what I think it's capable of achieving. That is why I am euphoric right now. Because I think, I mean, it may be me being Jim Carrey in Dumb and Dumber and saying, so you're saying there's a chance. But there is a chance.
Listen, I think
there is a chance.
I think
there's a lot of shit that needs to happen.
the moral of the story, and I think you're bringing it up well, is there's a lot to come. There's a lot of things that need to be fixed. There's a lot of places that Dota 2 needs to go. But if we had a conversation, we had conversations 2 to 3 months ago about starting these fixes, and we had said, and we've said it before, will Valve name majors? Will Valve take that next step towards regulation? And the answer was generally, no, I don't think it's going to happen. So the first step is there. Valve has stepped up. They've said we want the competitive scene to be strong. We don't want people and players and organizations to get screwed. This is our first step.
Yes.
That's meaningful. I think that's the big thing to take away from this is we are moving in the right direction to keep Dota relevant instead of Dota as a placeholder for something else.
And let me, again, I'm still kind of riding the high from my first LAN and now euphoric tonight and a little bit tipsy. There's a lot of human capital in this scene. There are a lot of really smart, really motivated people. There are a lot of people that work in this scene that could be making more money elsewhere. Mm-hmm. We have what we need to succeed.
Absolutely.
Okay? It's just a matter of getting the right infrastructure in the right places and getting the right people empowered to do their work.
No, I agree with that completely. And I think that this system will also make it more functional to get those people where they need to be. I'm hoping it will eliminate bare bones funding systems where every ounce of money a tournament has to go to prize pool, and they can start spending on things like the panel at MLG. We can all agree, and not just because Nahaz was there and he's on the show tonight, but the panel at MLG was one of the stronger panels that I've seen in a while. It was well structured, it was well designed, and it was insightful because you had people, and I talked to you a little about this, Nahaz, whose job was specifically to be a panelist, to work analysis, to be an analyst, I can never say the words right, and just talk about things between games. Casters could cast, analysts could analyze, and they were willing to, I don't know if they footed the bill or if they just said, hey, come, we'll give you free cookies, but they were willing to bring those people out there to do that, and that made a great event. So hopefully these majors allow more and more of that sort of setup at these tournaments.
Yeah, that's my hope. And the most important thing is it was really fun. Everybody there just had a really freaking good time. Even the teams that didn't do so well, everybody there had a really, really good time. And that's part of the thing. LANs are very, very important, and it bothered me a lot that in the previous system, LANs were just kind of disincentivized.
Absolutely. So we've blown the show way out of its normal time slot.
Sorry about that.
That's fine. What I do want to do before we sign out, though,
Shocker.
is I want each of you guys, all of us, will take the chance to just give me your final thought on this announcement, whether it was the first thing that came to your mind when you read it, or as you've sat there and talked this through, what you think is really the most important takeaway from this massive change coming out in the fall.
For me, overall, I think it should be a positive change. I mean, I think for longevity of players, of tournaments, it could be good. I mean, in the short term, there's going to be some rockiness for sure. While everything gets figured out, while people figure out the best way to run tournaments in between these majors, while formats settle. But I think overall, if it's implemented correctly, it should be good.
Yep.
No,
I think that's basically right. I mean, I think I am very happy with this step because it signals that Valve is listening, that Valve is committed to seeing the Dota 2 scene grow outside of TI, that there's going to be hopefully a much greater level of engagement and involvement between Valve and players and organizers and teams and the other entities that have helped this scene get to where it is. We have a lot of work to do. This announcement in and of itself is not, Dota is not saved, okay? Our problems are not solved. This is a necessary step in that direction, and I think it signals Valve's willingness to address those problems. But this announcement by itself does not solve them.
Absolutely. And I think that my biggest takeaway is this is great news. This is a huge step in the right direction. This is going to be exciting for fans because it means that the casual Dota 2 watcher, the person who doesn't want to follow 65 tournaments a year, can follow 4 specific quarterly tournaments and feel like they are a major part of what makes up Dota. In the same way that I only watch March Madness, I could care less about college basketball the rest of the year, I think this is going to have the same effect on esports. And I also want to remind us all of what it said in the statement, that Valve has said they love watching teams compete in high-stakes tournaments. And after addressing the fact they're going to have majors, they also said, we also recognize that there is room for improvement on a more structural level. So to me, that says that Valve is not saying 4 majors, done, everything is fixed. It says they're looking at it, they understand that structure is necessary, and that they are laying the foundation and the blueprints to take Dota 2 farther and farther into a new generation, which, honest to God, when I talk to people, I think that esports is something that when my son is my age, or 20 years old-ish, and I'm 31, so when he's an adult, he's going to say, man, that's a legitimate endeavor. That's something that you can do as a pro, and it's real.
And the talent is there.
Yep.
I cannot say enough how encouraged I was. The more players that I interact with, the more people from the scene that I meet. I mean, oh God, let's be honest. These are not people that live in their freaking parents' basements.
Right.
I mean, these are people that have law degrees. These are people that have engineering degrees, that were pre-med. These are very, very talented people. I mean, so I get back from this LAN, okay? And I all of a sudden now have people coming up to me on campus, like, recognizing me, like, you're Nahaz. I'm like, what? Okay. And the first 3 people that do, one is a joint law degree and MBA, one is in the med school, and the other is an engineering econ double major. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, this is what we've got in our scene. Like March, okay, from MVP. This guy was an engineering master's degree student at U of T before he decided to play Pro Dota. Like, these are not neck-bearded fools, idiots. These players are really, and organizers and teams, they are very smart and very talented people. There's an unbelievable amount of human capital and potential in this scene. And tonight, I think we at least have a chance to realize it.
Absolutely. I could not agree with that more. So before we sign out, guys, Greg, do you have any shout-outs or whatever else you want to say to anybody? I mean, I know you got a lot of brands you gotta yell about.
Not the brands as much. Tomorrow we're going to be casting a collegiate Dota tournament at Rochester Institute of Technology. You can find it on our channel. It should be pretty cool. Me and Travis are here, so it should be fun.
Awesome. Nahaz, any shout-outs or last thoughts before we go?
Nope.
Nice. I like that. You notice he leaned
Shout
back in
out
his
to
chair a little
MLG.
bit, though. He leaned back in
Shout
his
out
chair.
to MLG, who's
Disgusting.
come on, they took care of me, dude. It was a lot of fun.
Listen, not only did they take care of you, but I'm going to go on a limb here, and I'm going to say that they probably also got you hired to work at TI. So
I have no idea.
Obviously, no, it hasn't come out yet. But
you tweeted this too during that event that I am not the best at self-promoting, and I am not for a reason. There are plenty of people who I'm lucky enough to have a job, and I love my job. I love teaching. I love my students. There are plenty of people that are trying to make it in this industry. I will never complain if they get invited to a big event over me, but this is a lot of fun.
Can I ask you a question, a serious question, Nahaz? And
Sure.
It's important to me right now. I've been looking at it the entire time. That lamp seems uncomfortably high to actually use on top of your bookcase. Does that just sit there for decoration?
No, I use it when I'm reading stuff at my desk. So
You, like,
there's
bring it
actually
over?
light.
Ah.
No. There's actually light coming from behind me that shines on something I'm reading here.
You're so fucking classy.
What?
What?
A bookcase
Shut up.
lamp for reading.
Shut up, Greg. Just shut up.
Anyway, guys, that's all the time that we have for tonight. I want to say a thank you to Betway.com. So if you want to bet real money with a trustworthy site on using your Dota knowledge, check out Betway. Razor for giving me the sweet swag setup that we've got broadcasting today, and MM1.FM, a new app where you can get Dota-specific esports news as well as podcasts straight to your phone. Android and iPhone is available to you. So thank you to them for coming on board and supporting the show. Thank you to everybody who is here listening. It means the world. And a big thank you to Nahaz and What Is Hip for joining me on the show tonight, guys. I really do appreciate it. That said, have a wonderful evening. And as always, Toffee's out.